Let's get started. So because we know so many people in the group, this is hopefully going to be a rowdy crowd. I can already tell it will be. So for those that don't know me, this is my professional profile. Oh, Tony, I'm getting feedback on your line. As Sally said, I am the Chief Transformation Officer, which both my current boss, the CEO, and I had to figure out what that meant as I came in. But essentially, I think I learned in our breakout that it's the Chief Cheese Mover for people. And there's my kids and my wife and my buddy Ronald. So Ray, why don't you introduce yourself? Or you could have me introduce this slide, but it probably would be better done by you.
Yeah, well, hi everyone. Ray Ghanbari, Chief Technology Officer with Omnitrax, and since I'm a visual guy, I'll start with the photos. Yes, that is a big Lebowski pinball machine. It is well worth tracking one down. They're really awesome. I am a tree hugger, and I am a lifelong Cubs fan, so huge empathy for all you Rockies fans out there. I'm sorry. In terms of background, one of the things that I left empty here was the do you know section. And I'm a big believer in show, don't tell. And so I think one of the things that may or may not be clear, let's see if we can get the zoom in here. Do you guys see the Gorn there?
We do.
Yeah, I've got a known Gorn in my living room because pandemics, that means you don't have to say you're sorry. But I would also recommend one of those for everyone as well.
So, Ray, can you give us just a little background of before you were the technology officer at Omnitrax? Yeah, I took you took your professional background out, but most of the people know mine. So I wanted you to be able. Can you just speak to your background as professional for just a second?
Well, yeah, I've been in and around data and analytics companies for a long time, and I'm a sucker for industries that are about to go through a big data and information transformation. Inevitably, different parts of the economy at some point get connected enough that if you can instrument things and really understand what's happening, and you could tie it together in real time and pool sort of collective intelligence about what's going on, you could make it really easy for good things to happen, and you can make it harder for bad things to happen, and all ships rise. And so been in and around healthcare, was there in the early days of sort of Yahoo and Overture when we were in the early internet, when we were doing some behavioral targeting for content and ads. Stint in healthcare, doing similar things to try to measure behaviors and drive better healthcare outcomes. Most recently at a company called FICO, Fair Isaac, working on sort of large-scale data analytics platforms and taking them to non-financial services. And as of 4 years ago, sort of saw the similar kind of pattern emerging in the transportation industry, where enough connectivity was happening for vehicles that were on the road, loads that needed to be moved from point A to point B, and enough infrastructure that was in place that there was an opportunity to run the same playbook again. How can we sort of take advantage of everything being connected, even when it's got 18 wheels and driving on the road, in order to get goods from point A to point B better, and to help the drivers be safe and get home at the end of the day. And that's what we were doing at my company, Smart Drive, prior to the Omnitrax acquisition this last fall, and now as part of Omni. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, telematics platform companies in the industry. We're really working with Charlie and some others on the call here, to figure out how to really make a difference out there for vehicles that are on the road trying to get things from point A to point B.
So I have to ask, can you guys hear the audio? Because I was going to play this less than 2-minute video, because here's the deal. When I actually was looking at OmniTracks, I didn't know who they were. And I thought it might be useful for you all to have an understanding of OmniTracks for 2 minutes before we got in. So let me play this.
Yeah, Charlie, I don't think we're seeing hearing the video audio because I think you'll have to share your screen with audio connected.
Oh, I thought I had, and that's my problem, Pete. It's just thinking I had. All right. Sharing my screen again. Share with computer sound.
People, televisions to watch our favorite shows,
How
and
was that?
computers to help us solve complex problems.
Yep.
Today,
Although it's buffering. Okay. Well, we won't show the video then. Okay. So
Maybe put
one
the
of the
link in the chat.
Oh, good call. I'll do that. I'll do that when we get into one of our conversations. So if you're wondering how polished tonight is going to be, you should know that Ray and I just got out of 41 minutes ago a over 350 person 3-day big room planning event. So we just had close to 40 teams do all of their plan readouts, and many of the people that were on this call were the event staff for that. So if you see some people sleeping or not or drinking too heavily, that could be some of the staff, the team that helped run that. So it was our first actual at scale. We leveraged what SmartDrive had been doing prior to their acquisition, and then we basically brought in a lot of people without training, and we called them pods, but they were really trains. And we figured out a way to do 39 plan readouts in front of each other in one room virtually today. So it was a big piece. Anybody who was there, you're welcome to comment on that if you want. But that's certainly behind why we may seem a little off. Okay, so here we go. We've talked about OmniTracks. We weren't able to show any of the videos. We might be able to get that working. But we basically have, one of the things I realized when I came to OmniTracks was once you get into the C-suite, actually nothing much changes. It's still hard work. So there's no magic wand that exists, but it actually, to a lot of folks, it's like, I know for me growing through my career, it's like, well, I mean, why doesn't the CEO just do something about it? And you just kind of, and part of it is not understanding the mechanics of what's going on when you're the CEO or when you're on the executive team. And so a lot of that comes down to some of this background about how Agile absorbs uncertainty. Ray and I are going to have, and it actually might be good for us to go into breakouts for this one, where we get into an argument over, is the C-suite the first Agile team at a company or not? And there's strong, compelling arguments for both. And then I think we'll go around as like, what are some of the things that we've learned? Randy already chimed in on a few of things that might actually be really good context that are not visible to a lot of folks. So I'm just going to pause there, wait for some ribbing, wait for some overlay. One of the things that you'll learn is Ray, I kick him under the table sometimes when he goes long, but unfortunately he's in San Diego, I'm in Denver, so I just have a stub toe, but you know, so be it. Anything that's like people want to comment on or say, yeah, I really like that part, or not very interesting, or something like that. Oh my God, just when I want people to talk, Kristen goes off video. It makes it worse. It's killing me.
I'm just excited to hear what you got, Charlie.
Renato! Look at that hair!
It's flowing.
Oh my God. I didn't know you were here. It's good to see you.
I thought it started at 7:30, so I was late.
No surprise. All right. So I think Ray and I kind of came up with, oh, there is the video. Let's see if this one works actually. So Ray, why don't you give an insight while I cue this one up about like what's going on with some of these videos and how this technology works. I think it might be interesting for people for a second because they actually might understand what OmniTracks does with some of these videos.
Yeah, well, thank you, Charlie. Part of our technology is to put cameras in vehicles. They're facing the road and facing the driver. But we also have a pretty powerful, effectively computer, which is sitting in the vehicle that's connected to sensors, it's connected to the vehicle itself. What we do is we look for risky behaviors. And so we leverage accelerometer data, video data, vehicle data, and we try to understand when something risky is happening in the vehicle or around the vehicle. And when it does, we package up that risky event, we ship it to the cloud, we score that event for risk, and then we put it into a coaching workflow. And then our customers step through and they help their drivers understand when they're doing things they shouldn't do and how to become better drivers. And then over time, the driver's safety score goes down and down, and they become a better and better driver. And so, at Smart Drive, it wasn't atypical for in the first year after a customer installed our system, their collisions would drop by 70% or so. And so when you start seeing some of the really funky stuff that happens on the road, you begin to realize how any kind of measurement makes a huge, huge difference. The first time you start measuring something, it's incredible how many defects you surface and how many opportunities you surface for making things better. And so this happens to be a safety event here. And we got a driver tooling down the road, he's eating his peanuts, not paying attention, and then all of a sudden slamming the brakes when he sees that a car has slowed down in front of him. So if you watch it from the beginning here again, you can see he's a little distracted, looking out the window, all of a sudden slams the brakes really, really hard. And when you're driving a full 18-wheeler, the car in front there would not be a very happy car if he hadn't recovered in time. And so this is the business we're in. We're in the business of getting drivers home at the end of the day, helping things be better as they go from point A to point B, giving them the right route information so that they can get there most efficiently, tracking their schedules, tracking their logs so that they can be in line with regulations, tracking the weather where they're driving so that if they're speeding through a snowstorm, we send them a message saying, it's 31 degrees, you need to slow down. Barreling through a mountain at 60 some or 45 miles an hour is not a good thing to do. And we do this through a combination of edge analytics, cloud analytics, video, all sorts of machine learning and analytics across the board. And it's really about making all the vehicles and all the infrastructure as smart as we possibly can. I think Charlie kicked me.
Well, no, I was trying to keep up with you. All right, so let's get into one of our first theses of Agile absorbing uncertainty. And Ray, you made this point to me so elegantly. Like we were talking around it and you're like, well, Charlie, you know what this is? It's that we need our teams to be able to do good work in the face of uncertainty. And then Pete, here's the slide. I think I got it wrong, slide 16. Pete, you got to present this slide around uncertainty on both. Come back, Pete. Where are you, buddy?
I do not need to present this slide, Charlie, because I think you can present it quite well.
Yeah, so the whole idea that Ray and I had been talking about is that when you have uncertainty in a business, you really want your teams to be able to move forward. And so, I love this, Pete, how you've represented all of that. We got to get rid of the uncertainty on how we're going to get done. We're getting what actually. So we look at that.
Charlie, something happened with your mic. Hey, while he comes back on, Ray, is this based on the Cynefin model?
I'm sorry, the slide we're looking at? This is Pete's slide.
Yes, sir. Say what?
No, this is based on the Stacy model of complexity. But yeah, I mean, you could take a complexity model through Cynefin or Stacy, and I think what we're trying to represent here is what is the best approach to deal with risk when you're in a complex environment, and whether it's Cynefin view or a Stacy view, how do we manage risk? So, Ray, I imagine you guys are dealing with an incredibly complex system of systems. And I'm kind of curious, when you say absorb, I wonder if you could describe what that means, the word absorb.
I've long believed that one of the primary roles of leadership is to absorb uncertainty on behalf of your team. Because if a team is debilitated with the uncertainty that they're confronting, they just can't make forward progress. There are too many options. There's too many choices. There's too many trade-offs to be managed. And there is value to be had in momentum. And so as you get momentum towards the good, being able to learn, adapt, and empower a team to be able to navigate that path is all about sort of creating that trust and absorbing the uncertainty that could become so debilitating for them. And so as Charlie and I were brainstorming about this, the aha was connecting that back to what, Agile and a product development mindset is all about, doing the same thing for development teams, where you have a combination of execution uncertainty, user requirement uncertainty, process uncertainty, but still you'd like to have an enabled and an empowered team that's able to take the most important pieces, demonstrate credibly to themselves that they're able to make progress against it, be able to truthfully and openly assess where they are, and then take the next step forward together. And Charlie, are you back?
Yeah, I am back. Yeah,
I don't want to steal your
just
thunder
deploy
here.
so that Pete would have to do the last slide.
And so, leveraging constructs like epics and features and stories, these are all ways to sort of be managing uncertainty at a level of granularity, which is appropriate to the decisions that need to be made and the execution that you need to take on. But with the flexibility so that every step of the way, each one of these is feeding back and updating all of the things that are upstream so that you can course correct and tact and do what you need to do to sort of maintain momentum and keep going forward. Within an Agile team construct, you have people working on a 2-week sprint, for example. They're taking it for granted that a lot of sort of the broader framework has been laid out before them so that they could be focused on uncertainty within that 2-week execution window, drive it to closure, and then take the next chunk. As we all know, as you scale that up, you've got many layers of different time horizons and different kind of interdependencies that you've got to stack up. But this is not really that much different than what you have to be managing at a corporate level. And so, Charlie, if you don't mind, popping it forward a slide.
Yeah.
At a corporate level, it's very similar, but you're managing sort of a different sort of anchor points, if you will. Ultimately, as an officer in a company, you're accountable to shareholders, you're accountable to customers, and you're accountable to your employees. And there's a constant balancing act between all of these. And you never have perfect information about what it means to deliver profit, what it means to have a happy customer that is getting value out of what they've purchased from you, and what you need in order to help your employees be as productive and effective and as contribute as much as they possibly can. But you can't wait until you figure all of that out in order to give direction to the organization and get an organization enabled and empowered to push forward. And so, Charlie, this is yours. Why don't you speak to this? I'm speaking too much here.
No, you're not at all. I mean, the reality is, like, as you stand there as let's say a developer, right? You are able to move forward because someone above you has has provided enough certainty that you can do good work. Well, if you start from the top, a portfolio informs a product manager what's really they can work on with certainty, and then they go deal with the uncertainty, and then they kind of package it up, and then they hand it over into epics, and then the product manager can hand that down into product owner. It's these layering. But at the end of the day, the worker at the lowest level of the system is standing there and is insulated from the uncertainty by the CEO. Ultimately, the direction that they set provides that umbrella for them. And so constantly a CEO is providing that umbrella of support to get rid of the uncertainty as you use that system. But if you turn the other way, the investor, the ownership group, is saying, I want certainty of my investment. I want you to generate a certain amount of EBITDA. I want you to grow in a certain amount, and I want certainty in that. And that's why I've invested in you, and that's why I've placed that in you. That you place you as the CEO of a company or as an officer of the company. And so in the other direction, now the CEO is being asked for certainty that he has to deliver to a stakeholder in the exact opposite direction. And balancing those two conflicting mechanisms is actually why being a CEO is actually so difficult. A lot of times this is not visible. I'm interested in people's reactions to this because Ray kind of introduced this idea to me, and we kind of came to this at the end of last weekend. And you guys can say it's totally crap, but I'd love some feedback on that.
I see this every day in my company. It's like there are two worlds that we live in sometimes. And so trying to bridge that gap, I think, is a great opportunity. And business agility helps with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the way I see this, Charlie, is it's almost like the right side is depending on the left side, and then they blame the left side. So it's like we can't get business predictability without you guys in engineering giving us engineering predictability. And so it becomes a blame game.
Right.
And I like the way you described it, that they both have their uncertainties. And I think what you're introducing to them is recognizing their uncertainties as much as the engineering and development uncertainties.
So I see it as the right side for me is, the why and where are we going and where is the business going from that perspective. What is it that from the business perspective we need to do to be successful? And the left is like the big toolbox that I'm going to use to be able to build the vehicle that it's going to take me into that future that I want to take the company. With other direction, I just have a toolbox that has no use. And without the toolbox, I'm going to be walking and it's going to take me a long way to get to where I'm going. So that's how I see those two interacting.
If I could just build on that, Tony, it's a thought that came to me while I was watching the Omnitrax video of the truck speeding in the mountains. Like, you guys can build all the analytics and all the cameras and all the analysis tools that you want, and you can relay that back to the company. But if the company, your client, keeps on incentivizing drivers to getting to point A, from point A to point B as fast as possible and not take safety into account, or if they're punished for not getting to point B on time, snow be damned, your analytics are useless.
Yeah.
I think a question, it's interesting that you call it dueling forces, because as I was listening to the description leading up and talking about, the sort of the perception, the uncertainty that lives both at the sort of team level and the technical space, and then also up within the C-suite. I mean, you're talking about the same thing. It's just a different fractal of it. And so is it really dueling forces or misunderstood forces?
And I think that's an excellent point, because where disconnects happen is, well, we don't need a plan. We're an agile team. We will work on the most important things, and when it's done, it's done. And if you are managing, on the right to a certain set of market expectations or a certain set of profit expectations or expense expectations, you've just lost a critical lever in order to be able to manage the execution at the level that you need to be able to manage. And so I think, bridging the misunderstanding with understanding and appreciation of what each side of this equation needs to be successful, I think is a big challenge, but also, you know, a big opportunity. You know, the spirit of this is help me help you. You know, as an execution team, how can you help the leadership of the organization be successful? How, as a leader in the organization at the C-suite, how can you help your execution teams be successful? And having sort of an appreciation of that codependency, I think, is a very important thing in order to reduce friction, because friction, obviously, during times of stress, can get overwhelming to best intentions on best practices.
Yeah, one of the things that I see a lot as a pattern is this desire for certainty and predictability results in a push from the right to the left on behaviors that actually create even greater uncertainty at a macro level, because you can't respond because you're trying to plan all of the ambiguity and uncertainty and volatility out of the work. And what's really required is the right needs to embrace that.
So one of the things, Randy, to that point, I just came to mind is if I come back to the slide that I refused to present earlier, you know, this works for me. In traditional project management, we always want to talk about the how and fix for that, and we'll worry about the what later. But actually, as I've come to be in the role I'm in, most of the people around me, you know, including ownership group and peer sets, they have no time to talk about the how. How doesn't matter, because the what of our three stakeholders externally, of what is our return, what is our market growth, what are our sales number, what is our product set, like the what's, is the only thing that people will want to fill their time with. So there is some rebuild of this, and Pete, you'll have to author it because I can't draw for crap, which is when you get the stakeholders that want the system, they're actually the ones that have an arrow that looks the other way, which is all they care about is the what. And in that, it actually significantly reduces your ability to be successful.
I just wanted to echo what Randy said about trying to control and trying to root out all the ambiguity instead of embracing it. I think as whether the Stacy model then or the Kneffin model, we are comfortable when we can know things and things are not ambiguous. And so we have to, I think, fight to be comfortable with not knowing the answers up front.
I think the problem though, Kevin, shareholders don't care. And so then you see that's at the end of the day, you know, the concept, and I've learned this as I've tried to get my position just at the table, was if you appear to be focused on the what, or if you appear to be focused on allowing for ambiguity, it actually represents a problem when you're dealing with stakeholders that aren't in the system, that are just looking for, you know, when they are separated by an ownership group.
So Charlie, should we care? You know, I want to distinguish shareholder from board. You know, I'm wondering, how much do you care the shareholders care about this?
I mean, I think the board is the instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I would agree that if we need to, sorry, if we need to teach the board, I think we do. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Ray.
I was going to say, I've never interacted with a board that wasn't an almost 100% pure representation of the other shareholders, whether it's a public company or a private company. At the board level, you don't actually want to focus on the how. You've hired an executive team to do that. And you've incented them significantly in order to do that. And so a board's authority is to replace the CEO at the end of the day. Everything else is suggestion or strong suggestion or potentially a demand. But a board is not the operating leaders of a company. A board is a shareholder representative to make sure that the shareholder interests are represented and risks are being mitigated. There may be board members who come from strong operational backgrounds who can't resist digging in if they see something that's broken. But if things are running well, the board will take a step back and not spend any time on that at all. If a board is spending time on operational execution, there's serious problems with the company.
Yeah, I'm not recommending spending time operationally. What I'm trying to represent is, do they represent a proper risk-based view of the business? And when we go into Cynefin and we go into Stacy model, what we're saying is some traditional thinking around risk doesn't operate well in a complex world. And if a board is not representing risk properly, I don't think they're representing their shareholders properly. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm getting at. Not necessarily they should be they should be worried about the how, but they should be looking at risk.
I think you're spot on, Pete. I just haven't heard a way to frame it in a way that gets traction.
Yeah, I'm interested because I'm presenting to a board and I'm being asked to a few more times, and it's interesting that some organizations are trying to teach their board, which I think is an interesting opportunity. I don't know if it's right, but yeah.
Well, it's a fascinating thought because what's in this picture is you basically have a systemic setup to create things that don't quite line up. The shareholders, the stakeholders on the right are looking for uncertainty in an uncertain world. And even if you can absorb some of that uncertainty, I mean, you're either what Pete asks is really the question of, is there a way to get in better alignment on how you're going to deal with that, the fact that the world is VUCA. So it's a fascinating question. The mindset required to live in that uncertainty and say, well, how's the best way to proceed? Not everybody has that mindset, right? And that's part of the struggle as Agilists is where's the mindset, right?
And if boards could read shareholder intentions that great, then more companies would be doing good. And Tesla wouldn't be worth 8 times all the other car makers combined, right? Shareholders are by nature an irrational herd. So a board that tries to force its company into an imitation of everything that's gone down for the past 50 years is not reading the playbook, is not seeing what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And it's the world that as Charlie's talking about, is really the world he's living in. Is that's the world he has to live in right now. Can he shift that world?
Well,
right.
This is actually a perfect segue into a breakout, and Sally, you'll need to help us we wanted to have a proper discussion. So one of the things Hill and I stumbled on a couple of years ago was, like, there's cross-functional teams, and anybody remembers that org diagram where it was like the cross-functional teams are down at the bottom of the org chart. But then we looked up and we were like, oh, well, the C-suite is an Agile team because they're all cross-functional. And so we wanted to go, I don't know what the right time is, probably 5 to 7 minutes into smaller groups. And we wanted to basically see if there is a consensus or not, which is the C-suite actually the first Agile team at any company? And to seed your thoughts, I probably put too many on the against, because Ray said he was going to take that one when we were going to duke out in front of you. But arguments for is that they're cross-functional, but arguments against actually are quite large. So I'm going to take that away from you to not over-impression you. But is the C-suite an Agile team is a rather open question, and that is where we are going to go into small groups to just discuss that. And if one person could come back with a representation of the voice for that room.
Alrighty.
And now, Sally, this is where there we go. We go into our rooms.
How do I get to a room? Because I was late and I don't know how to.
It should pop up. I just realized I was on mute. Did you get a notice that you were getting, your room was opening?
Like a chat or?
It should pop up on your screen. I'm trying, oh, here we go.
Uh-huh.
Some people weren't assigned. Let's see.
Oh, room 3. Okay, I
There
see
we
it.
go.
No, we're the first back. That's why it looks exactly like room 3.
The dream team.
The dream team, exactly. We got this stuff figured out.
The answer is definitely
C.
42 fails.
42. So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Oh, God. If anybody's wondering, I am not actually a pantomimer. It's just that I don't have a light in this room in the basement yet. And so, like, if I step out, you can start to see the room a little bit, but
I just thought you had like a fire pit or something. You're just, you know.
floating head. There we go.
He's in the woods.
Remind me of that Queen video.
Yeah, I was thinking Bohemian Rhapsody as well. That's exactly where I went on this one.
Can you put yourself in black and white?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Let me do that. Okay. So, Sally, I thought because you did the breakout rooms, you could also ask people to get organized, because I'm clearly disorganized. No, I'll do it. What did people learn? What's the readouts from the various teams?
I'll jump in there. One interesting theme that was emerging is really about the mindset of the leader and how the leader, the CEO, is showing up. You know, what degree of transparency, what degree of empathy, what degree of gracefully handling uncertainty. COVID's been a real stress test for CEOs, so we've seen some extreme examples.
Yeah, I would say similar in team 2. We talked about is Agile required, like Scrum required, or is mindset enough? And you know, lowering WIP and transparency and feedback and failure and living out the values. And to some degree, I think that is, you know, it is enough.
We started having a discussion, and we said that, you know, basically the mindset that if it isn't already, the C-suite should be the first and most agile team, because, you know, that's where the concrete for the walls everywhere else is poured. Right, that's where it's created. So they have to collaborate, they have to knock down the silos. And then Tony had the great idea of just looking up the definition of agile team on the Agile Alliance site, and the C-suite fits everything to a T.
About room 4.
Who was it? Did we have a fourth room?
Oh, or 5. We skipped 4.
Oh, 4.
You want a room 5?
That must be I agree with everything they said.
Yes,
What happened in room 5 stays in room 5.
Okay, so I think we won't come to resolution on that, but I think it was a good dialogue. The thing that I mostly kind of heard was it really comes down to the CEO. And I can say from my experience, having joined a team, you know, the tone of the group is set by the leader. That's an obvious statement, but you know, whether you're going to have an agile C-suite or not really comes down to the CEO, and no other factors can really win the day, is my personal experience. So,
yeah, I think one piece of context is that the optimum culture for a company is really situational. And that's actually one of the very important things that a board needs to decide, is what does a company need to be successful given what's happening in the market today, or where the company is today. And, you know, this is one of the reasons why you have leadership changes within companies. You know, it's because you get such a pervasive change. You know, there's a big difference between a wartime general and a peacetime general. You know, and if you're in harvest mode for an industry, you need a very different mindset than if you're in an industry in transformation, and you need to be able to pivot from going to the left to going to the right in order to save the company, or if you're in the hyper growth market and you're really driving things in a different way. And I think the best companies and the most successful companies are acutely sensitive to the broader environment that they're operating in, and then bring in the culture and the leadership team, which is really optimized for applying the levers that make the most difference, most positive difference for wherever that company or that industry is. These are really purposeful decisions, I think, for boards that really have their act together. Is, what type of leader do we need for the next 4 or 5 years in order to get, the company from this side of the S curve to hopefully the top of this S curve, where we have to make that decision again.
But I think that's situational, the type of leader that you need depending on where the company is at, okay? But as a team, the C-suite should operate as an agile team. They all have specific tasks, specific roles. They all are working after the same goal. They all share the responsibility. Either they swim or they sink together, and they have that mentality, and they're empowered to make the decisions that need to be made. So at a broader level, I think that they should operate as an agile team, even though the goal for each company may be different.
Yeah, and what came up during group 3's readout, or like our discussion, is that's where silos start, So if we can get the C-suite working in agile, that's where we can break down those silos from there, and then hopefully those will get removed as we go further down.
It's a sense that unity of purpose needs to start in a C-suite.
It's something though, and I don't have any way to prove this, but it's an idea I have about reflecting on behaviors in the C-suite. There's another part of it, which is the people who have sufficient experience to be eligible to even apply for a position in a C-suite maybe have a lot less time under their belt using agile practices, or cut their teeth at a time when agile practices maybe was relegated to just development teams or didn't exist by name. And so, in my experience in working with the C-suite over the years, a lot of them, they're like, well, no, you don't do that here because that's not how you're successful. And so it's almost like, frankly, talking to my, racist family members back in Virginia, it's just what they understand. And I'm like, I want to beat you over the head because you don't see how ignorant you actually are.
So how do you address that when you're one of the members of the C-suite and, trying to help them change that mindset and understand a new way of being successful?
Help them when they're in despair, help them when they're stuck with a new way of working. I mean, it's basically, the Cotter method, just find the smallest chink, celebrate that small success and entrench it back in to me, I think it's a really simple answer. Unfortunately, it's a hard answer.
Yeah, hard to
And
do.
it takes time.
So Charlie, do you think in the next 15 years, as the next generation comes up, it'll be a little easier because that's how they have kind of matured into their role, that it won't be such a strange concept?
Yes. I mean, for those that know, somebody just recently came over from Travelport, and she just on Monday was starting our strategic portfolio review with the C-suite. And as part of the lead up, we're like, well, we need to really compare what like traditional portfolio management looks to lean agile portfolio. And this is, somebody who's put in front of the C-suite. And she goes, yeah, I don't know traditional portfolio management. I only know lean agile portfolio management. So I think it takes time.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
So we're actually on time getting a little short. But there were some things that we have no more slide material other than what's here, but just some things that Ray and I had written down, and Randy had already picked one up that he loved, or at least identified with and was being nice. Some of these things really are just tips where I have beat my head over or have messed up in the previous years, and I thought, well, probably be good to write on paper. And then Ray also wrote down a few as well. Just be interested if anything's really you take really identify with or take exception to or are confused by, because there's just not enough time for us or logical for us to step through all 8 of these.
I really like your number 5, and it's the first time I've heard it said that way. And I think Randy, you're probably picking up on that too, Mr. Value Stream there. But you know, it's the concept.
He was ranting about that before you came on, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's the. I mean, it's like it ties in the concept of extreme whip and focus versus an incremental versus, you know, solving the ocean, and I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just know we wrote like 91 versions of value streams at Travelport, and it never went anywhere because we couldn't agree on who was going to be on what. And it came to me just most recently with Omnitrax, was like, well, we could just pick this one and like just value stream that one and make it a little better.
Yeah.
I mean, it ties into the less construct, optimize one thing.
Yeah. I'd love to know if there's a story, at least of anybody on this call. I'm sure there are stories that exist, but what's the kind of macro level ROI on all the time that organizations have spent doing all this value stream mapping and analysis? Because the thing that I was jumping in on earlier was I've never met the executive team that took the results of that and said, yes, do that exactly. Like, it's always, well, and you end up starting with 1 or 2 areas anyway, and you just spent all that time simply painting a picture of what's possible, which there's some value in having a true north. But in my experience, you're better off just jumping in and iterating towards it.
Well, there's also the piece of who's the change going to impact. Somebody quipped in a meeting I was in this week, reorganizations have lots of support until the number of VPs is going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's jumped on my 90% of statistics are made up on the time.
I thought it was 87%.
I thought 86.
And it's 87.7 if you throw in a decimal.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, you gotta be
and it
specific.
sounds a lot more convincing because the decimal means that you've got lots of precision. You know, you must have really thought about that one.
I like your number 2 a lot. Because for one thing, I love the agnosticity of it, because most of the agile so-called methods, you know, be they at scale or otherwise, are silent on this. Basically just silent. It's just, it's you know, no one's home, right? On middle management. And middle management, well, and Pete's going to tease me about this, 2 things are not going away tomorrow. Middle managers and the PMO, right? The Agilists have been trying for 25 years and the PMOs are stronger than ever. Why? Because the PMO basically become multimodal and absorbed agility as part of their remit, because that's where the expertise in terms of getting things delivered was. And there was a vacuum. Same thing with middle management. Middle management appeared during, you know, the time of the Egyptians, and they have a role to play moving forward. It's just, it's no longer the command and control and how much time to finish this widget, Smith?
Well, there's
Charlie.
Create the conditions.
There's a 1 prime or a 1 + 2, which is not quite 3, which is if you come into an organization, you say, I'm going to get all the teams agile, and you focus on just like, we don't need to worry about scaling agile, we don't need to worry about program management, portfolio management, because we're going to have awesome agile teams. My experience tells me it won't be 6 months before the organization chews them up and spits them out.
Yep.
And so if you think about, well, that's because of the middle management, but it's also because you over-optimize the part of, if you treat the company as a system, you over-optimize the part of the final delivery piece,
Absolutely.
but you didn't focus on the other layers so that they were delivering the right pieces.
And the notion of self-organization has limits as well, because self-organization to a point becomes optimization, local optimization.
Yeah.
Right. So you need that coordination. You need something to create the coordination. Call it what you will. Middle management, call it PMOs. I don't care for either of those constructs moving forward as they exist today. But what we cannot lose sight of, I think, is there will always be a need for a glue in the system, a binding, an ability for oversight and binding that is not overbearing.
Hill and I just last week talked about good old the functional org chart and the network, and how these two things actually, you, instead of just accepting that a network will occur and you just allow it, do you actually manage it, or you are more intentional with it than we are today?
You can actually
Well,
use
and
those
enrolling
functions
one to
support
support
it.
the other. Yeah, exactly.
Support,
Enrolling
yeah.
one to support the other.
Exactly, they can support one another, and that becomes the new construct, right?
Well, it's the story of where do you put the sidewalks?
Love that. Yeah.
Right. So look, leave the sidewalks out for a while and watch where the tracks in the grass are. Okay, that's where the sidewalks should be.
Yeah. Well, so Charlie and I, early on in the transformation efforts at Travelport, actually went ahead and started forming those middle management groups into teams, right? So, typically we think of teams as the people that are building software or whatever, forming them into teams, properly bringing them through, kind of the 5 dysfunctions model, conflict models, different things like that, to equip them to be able to be making decisions and supporting these trains, and then enrolling them, and creating the environment for them to enroll themselves in helping the teams adapt and change. And they adapted and changed and started taking it on themselves. And it certainly enabled us to scale at a far greater rate than were we to have stood there trying to push change on everybody.
Absolutely.
So we are kind of at our limit. So this has been fun. Thank you. Ray, thank you for joining us from San Diego. You got an hour on us. Sally, how do we formally close?
So just say thank you. If any, again, the sign-in sheet, I put the link in the chat. If you can sign up and just let us know you were here, so we can keep an idea of how many people come. We have some really good ones coming up. If you actually haven't joined the meetup as a member, if you join that, then you'll get notices of our upcoming events. We're always on the first Thursday of the month. And thank you so much to Charles and to Ray. This has been such a great conversation and such a great topic. So thank you very much.
Yes,
thank you
guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys. It was a lot of fun.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night. Yep. Bye.